In this demo, I will show you how to build a simple vehicle form. I'm referencing an Automoblocks toy which has snap-on parts. I'll be building the main body part. I've taken photos and imported side, top, and rear canvas views for my reference. I've built 1-degree curves to help with edge modeling. I'll start out building the wheels, connecting them with a body side, then the hood, the trunk, then I'll connect all those pieces together for half of the car. I'll mirror it and show you how to do some cleanup and detail work. So starting out with this curve, I'm going to extrude it, making sure I have curves enabled. I can choose either global or normal within the dialog box, or once I invoke the tool by clicking on the curve, I can do that by switching between global and normal here. In the side view, I'm going to extrude it normal to the curve using the Y direction. So I'll do that once, spacebar, and again, spacebar. I want to continue extruding, but this time I need to select a different edge loop to build the wheel well. So extruding again, I'm going to change this to global, which uses the normal XYZ axes of our world, and I will extrude that back toward the center, checking to make sure it ends where I want it to, and it's not actually built until I hit the space bar. To build this back wall behind where the tire goes, I'm going to use the bridge tool. And I can do this one at a time, edge to edge, or I can do multiple. So I'm going to select these 3, which I want connected to these 3, spacebar, and now I can select how many divisions I want. 2 is good. And to connect this top hole, I'm going to weld one CV to another using the weld tool. Set to target, I'll select the first one and the second one where I want it to jump to. Looking in shaded mode, it looks pretty good, but it's too rounded here, so I want to crease it. I'll select this edge loop, the whole thing, and checking in shaded while I do this, I can either crease or uncrease. So I'll click on crease, which gives me a nice hard transition from one face to another. So we've built one wheel area, and instead of redoing that, I'm just going to pick this subdivision object and duplicate it. Click the duplicate button and just move this to the rear of the car, moving it up slightly. And now I want to connect both of these wheel areas I've built. I can use the bridge tool again. So I want to connect these first 3 edges to these 3 edges. Spacebar to build, 2 divisions is good. Not bad for just a few minutes work, but we still have more to do. So I'm going to continue by building the hood using extrude tool. Set to curves, and I want to look at this from top view. And on global, I'm going to use the Y translation axis to move it inward, and I also want to rotate it at the same time before it's built to match this character line here. Hit enter to set that, and for the next extrude I want to continue by building it upward to give that little crease detail, and forward just a tad, spacebar, and a third time checking in my top view, I'm going to extrude that again while rotating it to straighten it out and moving it to follow the shape of the vehicle, and spacebar to finish. You want to try to match the number of edges to edges that you're going to bridge. So using the bridge tool, I'm going to pick all 3, 4, 5 of these, as well as 5 of these I want to bridge to. Hit spacebar. I only need 1 subdivision. It's better to start out with less detail and add more later. And using the same method, I'm going to build my trunk area by extruding this curve, checking where it's going to end up. Close to the corner is good, and spacebar again. The more edge loops I have in an area, the tighter the corner is going to be. And for the third one, I'm going to move it down a bit and forward, as well as closer to this wheel area that we're going to connect next. Just like we did in the front, I can bridge these together. But before that, I want to adjust some of these CVs so that they line up better. And you can either use CV slide or transform. I'm going to bridge 1, 2 that I know will work out. Figure this out as we go along, and I will bridge these 2. This doesn't line up. There's more on one side than the other, so I'm going to figure that out as we go. So I'll just do these last 2, bottom 2. And I see that leaves me with 3 sides which I can bridge this way. And now I'm left with a triangle that I've got to fix. So one way to remedy that is to insert an edge, and I can either use parallel or perpendicular, which just depends on where I want to click. Parallel is fine, so I want to insert an edge right here, and that will leave me with 1, 2, 3, 4 edges, which legally I can turn into a quad by bridging. And there we go. Next, I want to connect all these together, but first, as we go along, I want to straighten out some of these CVs, transform non-proportionally scale those, and I can bridge the front to the rear. I'll add a subdivision in there and pick these CVs and move them so they'll line up a little bit better with the body side CVs. Working in box mode, I want to bring these edges up, so I will extrude them globally up, checking in my side view to make sure they follow the belt line. Spacebar to set those, and I'm going to use my weld tool to target to connect these CVs that are close together in the front and the rear. And I'm going to pick this edge, and I want to extrude that closer to the center of the car, and I want to weld these CVs together, which leaves me with enough edges to bridge with 1 subdivision. And as you go, Just adjust your CVs as needed. I want that a bit more like that. And in the same way, I want to work on filling this hole here, but I have nothing to connect to, so I need to insert an edge. So I'll go to perpendicular and create an edge here so that I can connect and weld these CVs. And just like I did in the rear, I want to extrude this edge closer to center. And I want to weld the closest CVs, these, and turn to see what I'm looking at a little better. And I want to also weld these. Alright, so if I look at my vehicle from here, I have 4 edges that I could turn into a quad, but I know that I want to sharpen up this detail here, this crease in the front. If I insert edges, they're going to go all the way from the front to the rear of the vehicle, and that's going to give me more detail than I want. Plus I want this to fade out. So instead of bridging these, I'm going to weld these so this detail will fade out, but that's leaving me with a triangle here. So what I can do to get out of this pickle is insert an edge down here, which, even though it looks like a triangle, it technically has 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, which allows me to bridge it. And there we go. So let's take a look at what we've got. Okay, not bad, but this is too curvy. I want a tighter transition. So I will insert edges here. And also here, spacebar. And now they don't go from all the way from the front to the rear, but they do end, which creates n-gons, because where I had a quad, now it technically has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges. Let me turn off my curves. So I need to fix that. And since I did weld these together, it also left me with another triangle here. So I can use the cut tool, cut from here to here, and then I have an extra edge that I can just get rid of. So now I've got a legal quad here, and I need to fix this one, so let's try using that cut tool again. And I'm using my control to snap to these existing CVs. I can cut all the way back to my body side, and then I can pick this edge here and delete it. So again, I've got a 4-sided quad, even though it looks like a triangle, and I might want to pick that CV and just adjust that a little bit. And even the next one, so that crease is fading out. Let's see how it looks. Alright, and the one thing that I didn't finish up in the front is I need to continue that cut. See, we've got an n-gon here, so I just need to continue that cut all the way down to the bottom, which should correct it. Yes. I should point out that you don't always need to spend time chasing an n-gon or triangle. It's something to look out for when looking for the source of unintended reflections, but in the end, if it looks right, it is right. So looking at this area, I can see that this edge looks very zigzaggy, and there's a tool we can use to help alleviate that. First, I'm going to pick the CVs that I want to adjust and align. And then there is an Align to Curve tool, which allows you either to select a curve that you've created previously or to just generate one based on the position of these CVs. So I'm going to hit Generate Curve, and you can see that it straightened out this edge loop pretty nicely. And of course you can go and adjust further if you choose to. In the same way, there's a tool that helps you adjust your CVs based on a surface. So I've already built this rail surface, and I'm just going to move this away from the vehicle a little bit so when I demonstrate you can see all the CVs I pick are going to align themselves to this surface. So I'll hide this rail for a moment and pick these vertices that I want to move. Make that rail visible. Choose Align to Surface. Since I've already created one, rather than Generate, I will say Align to Surface, and then click on it. And you can see that those CVs I had chosen have now moved to align to the position of this rail. I could also pick some of the CVs on that rail itself and move them, and my subdivision object will follow. I'm just going to undo, and if I want to no longer have this rail controlling my subdivision surface, I would have to delete construction history. I'm going to hide that rail, and I just wanted to make you aware of some interface tools that might help you out. So had I selected the wrong CVs, then the wrong ones would have moved. And sometimes it's hard to see because I've got this X-ray on where I can partially see those that aren't sitting right on the surface. So you can have a little bit more control over that by going to the X-ray options under Window Display. Right now it's at 0.15, which means partially transparent, but I could change that to 0 and say Go, and now I can no longer see those CVs that I might not want to pick because they are not what the camera is looking at. In the same way, I could do this for hidden line if I don't have shaded on by clicking Turn On. And now the CVs that the camera is not directly looking at are occluded. I'll turn that off, and I want my X-ray back on. If I were to put that all the way at 1, it would be as if you could see the CVs all the way through the car. So I'll put that at 0.15, which is the default. And now I want to mirror this over to the other side so that we have two halves of our vehicle. So first I want to make sure the CVs truly are on center line. And if I pick them, I did pick all the ones from the front to the rear, even though I can't see them. But another thing you might want to be aware of is under Preferences, Selection Options, you can enable camera-based selection. You can choose that to work for shaded or both shaded and wireframe. So if I say Go, and now in my back view I pick the vertices, and I take a look at what it really picked, it's only picking what the camera saw. So sometimes that's useful, and in this case it is not. So I'm going to turn that back off. And again, pick all my center vertices, and I just want to make sure they truly are on that grid, so I'll use Alt to snap them before I duplicate this object. And the way I think about figuring out which axes to mirror this on is, in VRED, I would want to do it along the Y. But in Alias, I need to pick the opposite two, which would be Z and X. So with that object selected, I'll say Edit, Duplicate Mirror, make sure it's on the correct axis, and say Go. So right now I've got two subdivision objects, and I want to make these one. So if I weld these CVs on centerline, then I'll have the correct continuity connecting them. So I just want to enable my weld tool, set it to tolerance, and then pick all these center CVs. And now I have a single subdivision object. If I wanted to separate faces from a subD object, I could just pick those faces and go to the Extract tool, which allows me either to keep original, which makes a duplicate, or leave that unchecked. And when I say Go Now, I've extracted those or whatever faces you had selected. Again, I'm just going to weld them back together. You could have chosen to work with symmetry in your layer, or in your shelves there is this symmetry tool, which if I click on it, it asks me what I want to add symmetry to. So I'll pick my subdivision object, remove construction history, and if I look at this in wireframe, you'll see that there's this dotted square, which means I have symmetry on. And now if I do something on one side, for example, pick some CVs and move them, then the same thing happens on the other side. So while I'm in here, I'm just going to scale those. And then I just want to start working on building an undercarriage so that if I render this, then I won't have light leaking. So just correct a couple more things here first of all. And working in box mode, I'm going to hide, I'm actually going to delete this curve. I don't really need it anymore from when we were aligning. And I'm going to select these edges here on the front, body side, rocker panel area of our vehicle. And I'm going to now extrude those back. And then I want to weld to midpoint is fine. These CVs close together in the front and also in the rear. Just do it to target because it might be a little too far away. There we go. And now I can use the bevel tool. First I will select these edge loops, all three of them, and use my bevel tool. And you can just drag in your window to affect how large that chamfer is. Now I just need to bridge these, so I will connect this edge loop to this edge loop by selecting them and then saying bridge, build. I'd like to show you one more tool, but before I do that, I want to show you some other versions. Every time I do this demo, it turns out a little bit differently. And in this version, I inserted edges on my quads, and they went all the way through my vehicle to the rear. And you can see I end up with a lot of extra information here, and if I were to inadvertently move a CV or an edge, then I might get a ripple or a wobble. So there is a strategy to this, and you'll find what works best with practice. Here's a version where I took a little bit more time to build these details more accurately to the design intent I was trying to achieve. I left a hole here to show you that there is a fill hole tool. If you get an odd shape and you're not sure how to just quickly fill that in, you can use this tool and choose either multiple or single faces and just click anywhere on that. And it fills the hole in. I'm not too concerned about having n-gons on the bottom of my vehicle. There are many different ways of working which will allow you to arrive at a similar result. In this presentation, I've shown you almost all the tools in our subD toolbox. In a subsequent demo, I'll show you how to add details to this model. I'll show you the retopo tool, which works nicely with scan data, and also how to incorporate some traditional NURBS building methods using a hybrid technique.